Okay, well, hi everyone. Thank you very much for watching or listening. It's Liam Hartley here today with another episode of Presenting Champions for the Simply Inspired podcast. And today I'm joined by a very special guest. I've been looking forward to doing this interview for a long time, so it's great to finally be here. Today's guest, Ryan Sampson, who is the British champion for Spartan Bare Fight Club. He has another title fight coming up as well, which we'll be talking about at the time of this recording, doing some big things in the pit fighting world, which, as many watching this will know, is one of the roughest, toughest forms of combat out there anywhere. But as always with my interviews, the story goes deeper than just sports, just fighting and everything like that, because Ryan has led a very interesting life, served in Afghanistan, been through a lot of things in his life, certainly cultivated some mental toughness, which is one of my favorite topics, lives by the slogan, fortune favors the brave, a great slogan to live by, I must say. So, as always, we're going to be going deeper into those sorts of topics: bravery, mental toughness, the discipline it takes to achieve your dreams in life, and anything else that comes up. So, stay tuned, everybody. And Ryan, it's great to have you on the show at long last, my friend. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day for this. I appreciate that, mate.
No, thank you. I appreciate you reaching out and giving me the opportunity to have a conversation and to tell a little bit about my story. And yeah, it's a pleasure to meet you, my friend.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to meet you as well, face to face, just on a personal level, because having seen some of your fights and things like that, to meet you personally is very, very cool. So, I don't always start at the beginning with all of my guests. I mean, sometimes we start with something that's going on right now in 2023. But with you, I am going to go back in time for a moment and talk about where you grew up, what your background was like and everything, because there's a number of things there that shaped you into the man you are today. Obviously, I know about the military stuff, but I don't actually know much about your very early years. So, can you share with us a little bit about that, please, mate, to start off?
Yeah, man. So yeah, I'm born and bred Yorkshire. I'm from a town called Bradford. It's pretty well known. It's got a bit of a bad reputation in aspects, but it's a place that I call home, and I love it dearly. So yeah, I was raised by a single mother on a council estate where there was obviously it was like your stereotypical council estate. There was your hard nuts, your crack addicts, your drug addicts, should I say? That's a bit more polite. There's all sorts of mayhem and chaos going on. So I learned to navigate the roads quite quickly. I grew up quite quick because my mum worked many jobs, so she did her best and provided. I didn't go without. We wasn't poor on the breadline, but it was a struggle for my mum. So I want to give a shout out to all the single mothers, because me as a father, being raised by a single mum, I know how hard and how difficult. So credit to my mum and credit to all the other mothers out there. So yeah, I went a bit of a tricky road. I was mingling with unsavory characters, and I just realised that I used to say it was either army or armley, and obviously there's a HMP Armley prison located not far from where I grew up. So that was like my oh yeah, I give myself the opportunity to join the military at the age of 18. I completed my GCSEs at school and stuff like that. I enjoyed education. I did have the aspirations of going to university, but yeah, that didn't really go to plan. So yeah, I joined the military at 18. Joined a regiment called the Royal Dragoon Guards. They recruit from Yorkshire and Northern Ireland. They've got a lot of history. I think they're the second or third oldest regiment, modern regiment in the British Army. I think they came amalgamated back in the 16th century or sometime in the 16th century. But yeah, I'd say joining the military was it was a big decision for me. Obviously, of my ethnicity. My father said to me, "The army's no place for a black man." When he found out I was joining the army, and that was tough, because obviously facing racial discrimination, even though my mother's white, it has been tough. But yeah, joining the military was the best thing that I did at that time in life. So yeah, that was a bit quick on it. I went a bit fast then, Liam, but yeah, I hope I got it all clearly enough.
No, it's very good, mate. It's very, very good. It's an overview, it gives people the context of where you came from and things like that. And it's absolutely brilliant. I mean, changing your environment, changing your peer group. I just want to underpin that very valuable life lesson right there, because one of the biggest things you hear over and over again when I do these, people want to change and become a better version of themselves. You have to change who you surround yourself with. So it's definitely very, very cool. And a couple of other things to touch on very briefly, and then we'll go in full swing into the army and we'll go from there. But when you were growing up in Bradford and everything, was any sports ever part of your life growing up, or was that only something that came later on, type of thing?
I played a lot of football when I was young. I was quite good. I had quite a lot of success for my school teams. Every year we won the cup and stuff. From early years, I knew what it felt like to be a winner, and it becomes addictive. And then whatever discipline it was, I always wanted to win. I was never a sore loser because I'd faced defeat as well. So becoming gracious in defeat is something that I learned, and I think that's what a lot of people need to be. I say you need to look, you need to feel what it's like to be punched in the face because life is tough, and that's a nice realization. I think there's far too many people in the world, Liam, who haven't been punched in the face. But yeah, I played basketball, rugby, boxing. Because I say my mum, she raised me by herself till I was 13 years old, roughly. Then my dad came on the scene, and one of the first things he did was send me down to the local boxing gym. And I did that for a couple of months. I'd say about 3 months, I think it was. And I ended up sparring with some gypsy boys. Yeah, and I got punched up. But that were a massive realization what it's like to get punched and realize that I was not made of glass. But yeah, then obviously didn't really focus on sport much in my later teens, and then subsequently joined the military and did a little bit, obviously when I was serving.
Yeah, 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 that's cool. So that gives the sporting background side of it. Yeah, I mean, again, it's a very good life lesson for people getting their kids involved in sports, any sports, but especially what you were saying there about boxing, like you say, realizing you're not made of glass, being humble. Some of these very important lessons, obviously the discipline, obviously the self-control as well, because I really think there wouldn't be so many stabbings and things going on if more people put their kids into that type of environment to be,
Hang on, hang on. That is a topic of conversation with a lot of people recently. That there, if a lot of people knew what it was like to win or lose with this, like they did years ago on a street level. Obviously, for years they've been killing people with swords and guns and on government level, but on a street, humble working class level, Welshmen, Englishmen, Scotsmen, Irishmen settling it with these, and then buying a pint after and shaking hands or whatever. Do you know what I mean? There will be less stabbings and less young men feeling inferior, I think, and feeling that they have to prove something.
Yeah, I think so as well, mate. I think so as well. As you say, I mean, when you have the good old-fashioned, straightener or whatever, it is all sorted then. I mean, and like you say, a lot of people become good mates afterwards, and it's all, it sort of clears the air type of thing. Few cuts, few bruises, and that's it. But obviously, yeah, with the stabbings, I mean, it's somebody losing their life over an argument and their families and everything. And as you say, I'm of the opinion that some of these young men do actually feel intimidated in those situations. So then they actually feel, okay, I have to put something more back, and whatever. So very important topic. So coming back to you personally, joining the army now, something I do think it's important to highlight here. You said about the discrimination side of things and things like that. And one of the things I do in my interviews, I don't dwell on the negative. I always look at, what somebody went through and then how they flip that into a positive, or at the very least, if they had to push through it, how they pushed through it and what they learned from it. So, looking at it from that point of view with the discrimination side of things, I'd like to talk a little bit about that because it's a very important topic to raise people's awareness, but also, how you came through it and maybe one or two things you learned from it as well would be really cool to talk about, please, Champ.
The discrimination, like in life or during the military, because I can talk about both. It's
Let's talk about both, shall we? I mean, I figured it might come up in more than one area. So yeah, let's do that.
yeah, obviously. So obviously, being of mixed heritage, dual heritage, having a white mother and a black father, and being from a town or a city like Bradford, which is quite multicultural, and it's grown more multicultural within my lifetime. However, it has been segregated in many areas for over the years, and there's still areas where you can't really go if you're a certain ethnicity, or if you do go there, you most likely guaranteed you're gonna feel uneasy. If not, you're gonna have some sort of comment said from a passing car or something like that. It was more prevalent for me when I was younger because I was a kid back then. But yeah, there was times when we get chased off of council estates because we'd beat a local football team at football, and the team that I played for, this youth centre basically. The team was quite multicultural. It had quite a few black lads, mixed heritage lads, Asian lads, some guys from Pakistan, Bangladesh, and a couple of white lads. And yeah, we ended up beating the team that was predominantly white, and they ended up chasing us, attacking us with sticks, picking bins up. There was motorbikes, like dirt bikes, like firing mud at us. There was pit bulls, you name it. All of a sudden, it's like the community just converged on us and chased us. That was, I must have been about 13 years old at this time, 14 years old. And if it wasn't for an old man who was getting on the bus, who basically stopped the bus driver and said, "Listen, we got on the bus," and the driver was an Asian bus driver, seen what was going on, and he's like, "Yeah, just put his foot down and got us out of the danger." But that's just one of many instances, like walking around as a young, well, even now where I'm from, people, you walk down the street and people will cross the road like old ladies, and I've got white family, I've got black family. I love everyone regardless of skin color, religion, color, creed. I just love people because I've seen what human beings can do to each other. I've done bad stuff to humans when I was in the military. So when I see old people in broad daylight grab their handbag and cross the road blatantly because they see me walking down and there's only me and them, little things like that, it happens quite regularly, but it happens to a lot of people I know as well. So it's a bigger thing, and there is a lot of stigma between people of different colours in certain areas. I don't know. It's just getting a bit tiring. Do you know what I mean, Liam? I'm a bit tired of it a little.
Yeah, well, so you should be. I mean, in 2023, obviously, recording this at the end of 2023. I mean, it should be changing. I mean, obviously, it has come a long way as well. We have to mention,
Yeah.
but it's still got a way to go further. And it's a funny thing because in the area I'm from, in Wales, it's the same. You know, there's a lot of it's very multicultural. I have friends from all around the world, every different religion, every different cultural background, whatever. But you know, it is. I've seen the same type of thing where people don't so much fight with each other, but they close ranks and they sort of keep very much to their own and things like that in some of the areas. Not so much in the city like in Cardiff and that, but in some of the
Yeah.
more out the way areas, you know. And it's not good. I mean, people have so much to offer each other and so much to share, and we have so much in common with each other. And that's part of the reason I wanted to mention that, you know. Going back to the army side of things specifically, you know, I mean, other than that discrimination, did you settle into army life quite comfortably, or was it more of a difficult transition? What was your transition like, basically? Because it was quite a young age, 18. I mean, I know a lot of lads who've gone in between 16 and 18, and it is very young, you know, to change like your whole life around. So I'm curious to find out about how you handled that, basically the good and the bad, please, mate.
Yeah, with ease, the transition was easy, Liam. To be honest, like a duck to water, I should say. The fitness side of it, because I were naturally athletic, and the side of obviously being a young man. Most young boys have that are associated with playing soldiers, playing cops and robbers, playing cowboys and Indians, and I played all of them games, and I loved it. So yeah, joining the military and learning how to fire weapons and how to strip and assemble weapons and how to being the shouted at never really fazed me because I quickly knew that I needed to toe the line. Obviously, if you stood out for negative reasons, you were going to get picked up. The sergeants or the corporals were going to scream in your face. But I would say that for me, I knew what to do. when to do it, and I knew to always be 5 minutes before. That's one. Like, there's many things that I've taken from like my early days in the military. Things like they always say, be somewhere. If you have to parade somewhere, I have to be at a certain point, be there 5 minutes before. So every watch that I have, it's always set 5 minutes fast. So I always think I'm running late. So I'm always get somewhere 5 minutes early. Do you know what I mean? In essence. But yeah, I'd say the transition was it was an eye opener because I was around a lot of different different age groups. It was my age, like 17 and 18. Then there was a few guys who were in the late 20s, early 30s, like almost touching the maximum entry age requirement. So obviously I learned how to conversate and how to work as a team with fully grown men in essence. So that brought me on leaps and bounds early doors.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's very cool to get into the entry process because, as you say, I mean, so many mates of mine. Some people were the same. They took to it, took to water. Some people, I do know a couple of people who went in about 16, and they said they felt like they were too young for it. So it's different for different people, but it's very very good to get your take on it. And with the sporting side of things as well, you did a bit of boxing in there. I think you mentioned. Is that right?
Yeah, like with anything, my love and my passion's always been football. So when I joined the military, I played a lot of football. I played quite a bit of rugby as well. Did a bit of basketball, but yeah, I did a little bit of boxing as well. Sometimes in the military, it's good to do sport because you can get out of doing the mundane stuff. Because shooting weapons and clean, because you fire a weapon, you always have to clean it. You don't see this in the movies really. You fire something, you have to clean it. So when it got to after like say my fourth or fifth year of serving, cleaning weapons and firing weapons, I kind of lost a bit of passion for them because I thought I'd rather do something else. So if you get into like a sporting organization within the military, so you represent your regiment at football or at boxing or at rugby, you can get quite a bit of time off of work doing the normal soldiering stuff. So if you're quite athletic, it pays to use it to your full advantage in the military because it gets you to time off, like I said, but it also gets you to travel other places, not just in a military capacity. Because going to Afghanistan, going to Iraq, yeah, it was good. It's cool, it's interesting, but it's on a war basis, really and truly for me. And yeah, that lost its appeal early, really early for me. But yeah, going to different places on like battlefield tours when you're in basic training. I think it's like you're within your first month or so, or halfway through your second month. You all go on a battlefield tour to either the Somme or Normandy or Vimy Ridge, and that kind of cemented for me being a soldier, and that made me want to progress further in my career. So yeah, I went on a tangent, yeah, but yeah, man.
No, it's good, man. It's good. People always say that. People always think they have to be on one line of reason, but good things come out of tangents, because there's things. Obviously, I prep for this and I have a little look at things, but there's only so much you can find online, So the more people bring up, the better. And like I say, hearing things firsthand and your experiences straight from the heart, basically, is what people want to hear. So it's absolutely amazing. Okay, so that was the transition into the military and into more importantly realizing that really is what you wanted to do and everything. So obviously people are going to be itching at this point to hear about the actual war zones and the actual combat and everything because we've set the scene now. Just giving this a little bit of context, obviously, I've done quite a few interviews with people who have seen action. They have been in contacts, they have been in all these things, and people respond to it different ways. It's not always the easiest thing to talk about. So I don't know how it is for you, but I'm just saying that there's no pressure there. But in terms of all of this side of things, first of all, when it came to going to an actual war zone, one of the things I think people don't see is the expectation beforehand. And later on, when we get to the build up before a fight, as in like a pit fight or something, I'm going to ask you about that as well, how you mentally prepare. But when it came to going into your first real situation, whichever one was first, I'd like to get a feel for what you were actually feeling and what you were thinking and what was going through your head and the heads of the other lads before that, because it's something that people don't see from the outside looking in. Other veterans will know, but the general public won't know. So I think it's a very valuable thing to touch on there, please, mate, as well.
Yeah, man. So I'll give you a quick lowdown on. I went to Iraq in 2007, up to like 11. I went to Afghanistan 2010, Brigade Reconnaissance Force. That's Herrick 12. I went to Afghanistan in 2012 on Op Herrick 17, which was police mentoring. So yeah, like any tour, you have to do pre-deployment training. So it's mission specific training. So wherever you're based, in England or Germany. So when I was in Germany, I went straight from basic training, and within 3 months I was in Basra, southern Iraq. So it was quite intense. You were in hitting the ground running, and we did a lot of our pre-deployment training in Germany, Paderborn and Hornsfeld, I think, and Senelager, places like that. I love Germany as well. I love German people. What a place. Shout out to Germany. I'll big them up. But yeah, you do mission specific training, and that lasted however long it takes. You have to hit certain benchmarks, pass certain tests, shooting tests, fitness tests, first aid, battlefield, medical aid tests, all that type of stuff. Vehicles, you need to prep all your vehicles that if they're getting sent out there, or there's a lot of stuff there's a lot of logistics that goes on. So then yeah, we deployed to Iraq on, I think it was beginning of September 2007, and that was when they were starting to pull out of pulling out of Baghdad. The British, it was mainly the US forces, and the British had basically concentrated their forces in the Cobb, which was the central operating base, I think, and it was huge. So much of an American footprint. Wherever America goes, they leave a massive footprint, and it's like Britain just gets dragged along. It's crazy. But yeah, they had a subway. I'll just let you know, they had an actual subway, like a takeaway. I was eating Subway footlongs. I think it was obviously franchised by some Indian guys worked there. They made it was beautiful, and I remember we got for the time that I was in Iraq, which was about 4.5 months, because we came back early due to the drawdown and bringing a lot of manpower back. We got mortared a lot. So for anyone who don't know, mortars are one of the scariest things to come across on the battlefield, because it's Russian roulette, 50-50. When a mortar goes up in the air, you don't know where it's landing. And if it's accurate mortar fire, if that mortar team's got good technique and the well drilled, they'll be bracketing, they'll be on you. They'll be either over you, behind you, and then boom, you're in the center. And a lot of these mortars or rockets that they were firing were like old Russian munitions, fired off a big metal railing from 5 kilometers away. Do you know what I mean? So that was a scary moment, because at least later on in my career in the military, I was able to, in essence, face the enemy on the battlefield, face my opponent on the battlefield, gun to gun, man to man. But in Iraq, we just had to lay down and basically pray and hold yourself together, and hopefully you don't get hit by any indirect fire. So yeah, that was it was a tough experience, because I felt like you don't have any control in that. There's no control at all. You cannot shape your destiny, really. You have to just roll with the punches.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a hell of a situation to be in for anybody, but to be thrown into that. And like I say, mate, I appreciate you talking about it, because I know how it goes with this type of thing. And although you seem very chilled and everything like that, I got no idea what it's like to actually relive it. So I'm just putting that in there. It's appreciated because it feeds into all the topics that we're talking about with the mental toughness and some of the things we'll come back to later as well. With that in mind, I mean, I have to ask a fairly obvious question and I suppose it's a pretty big and broad question, but broadly speaking, I mean, when it comes to facing death, when it comes to facing the fact that you may not come back, I mean, it's something that everybody has to go through. Um, how did you personally cope with that, if you don't mind sharing it a little bit? I know it's a pretty big question. I know it's different for everybody as well. So I mean, I've heard people say about this and they have different methods and everything. But for you personally, what was your mental take on that, please?
When I was in the midst of battle, in the middle of it, living off adrenaline or living off fear, because fears people talk bad about fear, but fear is an amazing tool, Liam. If you're
Mm.
fearful, you're alive. If you can fear you can fear. You're still scared, but you're willing. And in the face of fear, that's where true courage comes, because you can be scared and you can be terrified, but you're willing to crack on and face your fears and yeah, and do what's required. But the thought of dying, that crossed my mind quite a few times, predominantly when I was serving in Afghanistan in 2010, because that was, I think it was, and I'm not bigging it up in any sense. I'm just, from what's been quoted, the summer offensive in Afghanistan 2010 was the bloodiest tour of duty for the whole time that the British were in Afghanistan in this modern era. Um, and we were in the middle of it as the Brigade Reconnaissance Force. We were trained by British Special Forces to do Special Forces jobs on a high level. Um, and yes, so encountering death, near misses. I'll be honest with you, Liam. At first, it was like running around in a computer game. I was loving life, and then quickly I got brought back down to earth when I saw my comrades, my brothers get hit. I had a friend of mine got shot in his face. He's still alive. He's from Fiji. That's why he's strong as all. Um, he yeah, once that brought me back down to earth quite rapidly, and I realised my mortality, and I thought, there's no respawns in this day and age. There's no respawns in reality. So, yeah. But I'll be honest. After a couple of weeks, it was like a computer game. You feel like you're bulletproof. The training that you've gone through, that I went through, I felt like I was on that much of a level above any foe. So any enemy could step in front of me, and they were getting chopped down immediately because I was drilled. My mind was working overdrive, but I could see everything. I felt like I could hear everything. And same with my brothers, they were the same. You tune into everything. Like the fact that a human who lives in somewhere Afghanistan and eats an Afghani diet, their shit smells much different to my shit. So like when we were tracking Taliban fighters through like jungle in essence, we knew where they'd been stopping to rehydrate and take a shit and have a cigarette we knew it was their shit because it were just stuff like that, stuff I would never know when I'm sat back in England, nice and comfortable. When I'm out there, I'm all my senses, my sight, my smell, my hearing, touch, everything was hyper vigilant, and it was an amazing feeling. But what goes up must come down, so I'll talk about that later.
Yeah, yeah, we will. We'll talk about one or two aspects of this. We'll talk about coming back and then how you dealt with that. Again, everything out of value of hopefully showing other people how they can come through things. And even if this bit, even if it just other veterans relate to it, I mean it still helps and it still hopefully contributes to them. But one of the things I want to ask you here as well, which is again, not going to be the easiest thing to talk about, but obviously when it comes to those situations where you mentioned earlier, I think the phrase you used, you said, okay, I've done bad things to other humans or whatever, which is, it's a low key way of putting it. But I've had this conversation with a few people. I mean, I had a guy on this show probably about a year ago now, Craig Harrison, who was actually a sniper in his case, and he had over 80 confirmed kills and everything. And we were talking about basically taking a life or badly injuring somebody or whatever, and how you compartmentalize that, how you live with that afterwards, how you put that in your mind and put that away in your mind, because it's something that obviously regular people will never go through, hopefully. And again, different people have different ways of breaking it down. Now, I don't know how much you can say about this. I don't know how much you want to say about it. And as I said earlier, there's no pressure to say anything you don't want to say. I mean, at this point, you could pretty much say, look, Leo, I'm not going there. And that's
Mhm.
obviously, I totally respect that. But if there is anything that you could share to give people an idea, particularly for, well, basically for us civvies, I mean, who've never been in that level of violence, could you share one or two things? I mean, maybe something to highlight it, like what we said with the discrimination earlier, and you sort of shared one story and it sort of highlighted, you get the gist. Is that okay to talk about that, Jam?
Yeah, yeah, of course. So like I said, we the Brigade Reconnaissance Force. It's not like no secret spy operation or like that. It's well documented. It was, I think it was, it's in its inception. It was made by the Royal Marines. I think it was in early 2000, like 2003, when Special Forces first went into Afghanistan. And they realised they needed to train normal green army soldiers, so armored corps, infantry, signalers, like your green army soldiers who go out and do your green army work, train, well, basically put this a group of soldiers, volunteers mainly, through a selection phase like they do for the special forces, but obviously nowhere near what the SAS or the SBS or SRR do. But put them through a selection phase. So ours were a 10-day course up in North Yorkshire, up in the hills, at some isolated military camp that I'd never heard of. And yeah, it was conducted by a warrant officer class 1 from the 22 SAS Special Air Service. And I looked at him. He was like he was like the epitome of man, like Hercules, jet black hair, he was a white guy, but he had a natural tan, like he'd been in the desert his whole life. He had a chest, like he was huge, and he had a room full of, I'd say, 400 soldiers. A lot of them already been to Iraq, been to Afghanistan. A lot of them highly trained, motivated individuals. He had us all in silence, like in awe of his presence. So yeah, I just wanted to highlight him. Obviously, no names or all like that, but he was some guy. And yeah, we had to do this selection phase where you had to do orienteering, so map reading, shooting drills in like rain coming down horizontal with wind at like 20 mile an hour. It was interesting. You had to do loads of fitness tests. And I think that's what got me through that selection phase, was mainly my fitness, because my map reading was all right, but it wasn't as good as most of the guys. But I think because I was fit and I could carry weight on my back, and I was tough and resilient, that got me through. And I was basically chosen. So what it is, all the regiments from that battle group sent all their best soldiers. Whoever passed the selection phase basically joined this group of highly trained soldiers in support of special forces operations in Afghanistan. So our job was reconnaissance by fire. So we'd go into a certain area on a map, and we'd do all your normal drills before. So you'd, like, 2 or 3 days beforehand, you'd build a model of where you're going to go, model houses. In some very artistic as well. You get some very artistic people in the military, and they probably never knew the war, and it brings out the skills in people. So basically making model villages with rivers and bushes and whatever. And so yeah, you get a target pack, you get a picture or a description of who we're going for. But our operation would be high level, but we'd be supporting high level. So we'd go in a certain area, Liam, and our job was to basically either interdict or infiltrate and obtain a certain individual, or basically just to draw the enemy's fire. So we'd go to where the Taliban lived. So the threat of IEDs was still very high, but nowhere near as high as what the lads had, who, the people who were based in the patrol bases. They were sat there in the same place for 6-7 months. And I take my half to them because they were going out from the same place all the time. The Taliban knew where they were, so they knew where to place bombs because they knew which route they were going to take, whether on foot or in vehicle. But my job, I was based in Camp Bastion, so we used to just fly in at 3 o'clock in the morning, march for a couple of hours, and just take over a certain area, and we'd fight the Taliban in their backyard, basically. So they couldn't really put bombs down so they had to fight us with guns. So it was like the early days of Afghanistan before, because like in any warfare situation, different forces are gonna they're gonna work trial and error. Basically, they're gonna see what works for them and what doesn't work. And like say example with the Taliban, they went from using IED, improvised explosive devices, which were made predominantly from metal and plastic. While I were out there, they were using IEDs that were, I think, 95% made out of wood. So our metal detectors that we used couldn't even detect them. We were just detecting the battery packs. So, like a normal AAA battery, even if you think it's finished, it still has enough power to ignite an IED pressure plate bomb, in essence. So, yeah, there's a lot going on in places like that. And the job that we did, it was like I said, we'd go in there, draw the fire, and basically hold our position so the special forces, whichever element that was, could come in to a separate area in the next village and do what they need to do. What is it, either capture or kill?
Wow. I mean, your descriptions, mate, I'm listening to this and it's so vivid, that it's like I can really picture it. I can really get drawn in. Obviously, I mean, it's still totally different than being there, don't get me wrong, but I can
Yeah.
I can still picture it quite vividly in my mind, and that's good for our listeners as well. So yeah, you were really in the thick of it then.
Because I've had time to process. Do you know what I mean? That was 2010. I've been through the phase. I've been to the dark place in my own mentally, and because I've been able to process it, and I've been able to talk to people, friends, family, complete strangers. This is why I can talk about it with charisma and with exuberance. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah, well, that's a good description because yeah, charisma, exuberance. I mean, you do talk about it in that way, and as I've already said, I mean, it's not the easy thing to talk
mhm.
about for anybody, but you do talk about it very, very well, and I respect that very much because no matter how many interviews I do, I mean, when I'm talking to people about any type of thing, obviously the war stuff, but like even if it's like addictions or mental health issues or things they've been through as children with like abuse or whatever, and people come on here and they want to share and everything, and I'm grateful for that because it helps other people. But I massively respect that because it's an amazingly brave thing to do. To be quite honest with you, to basically, I mean, you're basically public speaking about it in a way on here, and it's a very brave thing to do. So my hat goes off to you and everyone else who puts their story out there to benefit other people. I gotta say that. And with that being said, mate, I think a valuable thing to touch on is, well, it is those dark times, and it is those a couple of those things moving slightly after those times because, and again, not to dwell on anything negative, but now you're walking around, you're a champion fighter as well, which we will get to at some point. But there's so many other things, and you're doing amazing things. But obviously, I can tell instinctively, when we talk that you've been to some lows and some highs, obviously. Talking about those from how you got through them, I think is going to be the main thing. I mean, how you pulled yourself back from it. So let's start with it at all. I mean, coming out of a high intensity, well, that doesn't do it justice, but coming out of one of the most extreme situations people will ever find themselves in back to normal life. I mean, the one thing I've heard over and over and over again, it's a shock. Again, Craig Harrison spoke to me about this. He said, at one point he was in a war zone, and then he said at one point he was fixing a washing machine, I think was the example he used. And he was like, there's no comparison really between those two. So for you, coming back to normal life, and again, I'm not sure the exact timeline on this, but coming back into it, um, how did you adapt? Let's talk a little bit about your transition. It's quite a big question, so take this as far forward in time as you want to, but your transition after those times, please.
Yeah. So like the major gun battles, the major soldiering that I did, stuff like movies, were in 2010 with the Brigade Reconnaissance Force. 2012, I deployed to Afghanistan again, in more of a mentoring role because we were then handing, well, that was the plan, to hand ownership and control back to the Afghan forces, so to the Afghan police. So a lot of the patrols and stuff were going out, one or two British soldiers, and rest of them were Afghan soldiers, and it was basically the Afghans were leading the way for when the British and the Americans fully withdrew. So yeah, and while I was on that tour, my father, he died. It was the day after my birthday. I was told of his impending death on my birthday on the 8th of December 2012. It was, and so credit to the British Army when I got news from my sergeant that my dad was dying. I think they got me back. They got me from the patrol base that I was up near Side. Got me from there back to Camp Bastion, and then to where is it now? Birmingham, I think, somewhere in Birmingham, and back up into Bradford within, I think it was 72 hours. I think about 50, maybe 60 hours. So it was quite a quick transition. So credit. Unfortunately, obviously, my father had already died by the time I'd made it back. So yeah, that was a sad time. And subsequently, at this time, I was also expecting a child. So that had also kind of swayed my idea of leaving the military, because I had quite a few close shaves when I was in Afghanistan. Because I enjoyed being a warrior, and being a warrior means being at the front. Being at the front means going through doorways when there can be trip wires, or when there's a gunman who possibly high on opium, high on heroin, doesn't have any fear of death. I had fear of death, even though I thought I did. The guys I were fighting, a lot of them had no fear of death, either through being high on drugs or through their religion or through a mixture of both, but they had no fear of death. So yeah, but yeah, anyways, obviously losing my father, having a child, that was a tough moment. So yeah, that kind of swayed me to leaving the military, because I thought there's no way I can keep dodging bullets in foreign lands when I've got a dependent, a soon-to-be child. So yeah, then when I came out of the military, obviously there's a lot of job opportunities if you apply yourself. There is, especially if you go down the security route, so working nightclub security or static security in warehouses. So that was my immediate go-to. I was also a physical training instructor when I was in the military. So it was like my job to get soldiers physically and mentally ready for the rigors of battle. So yeah, I'd obviously do monthly fitness tests with them, go take them out on speed marches, all that type of stuff, log carries, you name it. We were doing it. It was that was a good part of my career. So also a good transition for me to go into personal training, because I've done it in the military. That was basically my plan of action, was to use personal training and security, so getting my SIA badge, and they were going to be my main forms of income, because that's the main fear for me, and probably for a lot of soldiers who were looking to leave. It's the income, because in the military you might not get paid the best wages. If you're in there for a while, you get sergeant, corporal, whatever. Then yeah, you probably might make 30, 40 grand or something like that, and it could be good. But that's the main fear of guys leaving. When you get everything paid for in the military, you get your dental, medical, it's your food. Well, at one point when I first joined, your food was not free in the army, but it got taken out of your wage before you got paid, so you didn't feel it. But they started bringing in a thing called pay, and a lot of soldiers struggled. A lot of young soldiers were having to get like basically a hungry soldier card from the army, and then they get disciplined because they couldn't manage the money. But it was that's a total different story. But yeah, leaving the military and going from everything looked after to coming out and having to pay for your dental fees. Like when I had to pay £18 for a dental checkup, I was shocked. I had the money, thankfully, but I wasn't used to paying for the dentist, because I went from school to the military and I never had to pay for dental or medical services or all like that. So it was a bit of a shock. And I'd say getting back into civilian life, working in nightclubs, it was good for me, because I had a good time. Obviously, it was enjoyable, but it wasn't really a healthy scene to be in. I was around a lot of partying. I was around a lot of drugs, a lot of negative influence. And it took at times. Sometimes I was the negative influence. So that's where I'd say really the problem started when I started to focus more on the making money side of life rather than the materialistic side of life, and try to replicate what I made in the army, and keeping that reputation. Because leaving the army, you're always a soldier, mentally, physically. You always want to be fit and be a warrior. That's how I look at it. But it used to kill me when people had asked me what job I did. Because I left the military in 2013, so I did 7 years in the army. When someone said to me, "Oh, what do you do?" and I say, "Oh, I'm a soldier," their reaction was priceless. I loved it because it was 9 times out of 10 a positive reaction, especially women, especially when I was a single man and I was out and about, and it was automatically I was charming them, and they automatically felt warm and safe and secure because I was a soldier in the British Army. But leaving the army, and then when someone asked me, "Oh, what do you do?" and I said, "Oh, I'm a security guard," or I work doing landscape gardening, and nothing bad on those professions at all, because them professions that I did for them periods of time helped pay my wages and helped put food in my child's belly. So nothing negative on them, but yeah, it was losing the whole moniker of being a soldier. That was hard to deal with, if I'm honest.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I totally get where you're coming from. I mean, it's big aspect of self-image, self-esteem, and everything like that. And you do hear it a lot. I've heard a lot of people say that, other soldiers as well. A sense of purpose, a sense of pride, things of that nature. And obviously, um, obviously, you hear a lot of fighters say that as well. I mean, that's the other thing, is you hear a lot of people come out of their boxing careers, their MMA careers, whatever. They lose that sense. But I have heard it with a lot of soldiers, former soldiers, where they lose that sense of pride in a way. And it's, I can understand. Not that you ever lose the pride of what you've achieved, but as you say, that identity, the self-esteem, even that's a powerful lesson. So we'll come into the fighting shortly. During this time, to ask an obvious question here, not to ask a cliche or anything, but I think it's worthy bringing up. Did you experience like the PTSD and the flashbacks, or the nightmares, or any of that type of thing from your war experiences, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, years ago, I probably wouldn't have been able to answer this question through pride or ego, but I went to therapy. Um, was it 2021 when the British and Americans pulled out of Afghanistan? Or was it 20? Well, last year, the year before, I think.
I think it was the year before. Yeah.
Then I was watching it on TV, and I was infuriated, Liam. I was angry because I felt like, even though my view on the military and what the military gets used for, and on the grand scheme of things, because in a nutshell, when we were in Afghanistan, the job that we were doing, I saw the benefits and the positives that we provided to the local people. I saw young children and women going to school, getting educated, living more freedom than they were given when they were being ruled by the Taliban. And we fought for that, and a few of my brothers died for that. Well, quite a few brothers, but my close brothers literally laid their lives trying to better someone else's environment. Obviously, I've through research and self searching, I've realised that the military is being used for not the best reasons. Really, going to Afghanistan wasn't the best idea. Going to Iraq certainly wasn't a good idea. So yeah, I have been, I wouldn't say ashamed, because I'm proud of my own survival and my own growth from my time in the military. But I do believe that the British Army and America and these countries, they have used us for the bad reasons basically, and it upsets me to think how much devastation's been caused by myself and others, not firsthand, but yeah. So it's quite sad. But where were we at then? I've gone off again. Sorry, bro. Can you
No,
remind?
no, no worries. I mean, first of all, just to highlight that, I'm glad you brought that up because it was something I had in mind to bring up, but only if we had time type of thing, because I've got like the main questions I want to get to and then some other stuff. But yeah, I mean, seeing how it is now where the Taliban are basically back running the show over there again, must be a shocking thing. And I was looking at it not that long ago, maybe a couple of weeks ago myself, and I'm thinking, okay, the Taliban are over in Afghanistan, they're running it, they got their own government, whatever, and it's like it must be the strangest type of thing. And the weirdest thing about that is there's very little media coverage of it as well. There's very little media coverage now of what's going on over there now. And you find that certain wars and certain things, like there's a lot of, obviously at the moment, there's a massive amount of media attention on like Israel and Palestine and all that side of things. But at the same time, you've got like a civil war going on in, say, Myanmar and Burma, for example, and people being killed and tortured and all this type of thing. And I know people over there because of the Lethway sport. I don't know if you've heard of that, but the kickboxing with the
But
headbutts. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I've heard, and like one of the top fighters, the Lethway fighters, was actually tortured and killed over there for protesting the government recently, like tortured to death. Like during, and you don't really hear like that was out there on a couple of like fight forums because I follow it, but you don't really hear much about it. But you hear everything about Israel and that's great. I mean, it's good that there's the awareness of that. But it was the same thing with Afghanistan where they pulled out, and obviously you heard a lot about them the soldiers pulling out. I would say more about the Americans and the British, but then you don't hear nothing about it now that the Taliban's running the show. And I was even looking at it, and they've got their own government. And on Wikipedia, there's like the different people who are like the Taliban, like prime minister, and the Taliban second in command or whatever. I don't know their own structure. And I was thinking, how come we don't hear about this? So I'm actually really glad you brought that up because it gives a totally different perspective on like what you went through and what it means because. Obviously, I don't think veterans get the respect they deserve. I think they get a lot of respect, but I don't think they get the respect they deserve whatsoever for protecting our country. But and for, as you say, freeing the country from what it was going through and the oppression. Like I started reading, I don't say her name right, but the Malala, or the girl who got shot in the head because she was advocating for the right.
something like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
she got shot in her head, I think.
Yeah, because she was advocating for women being able to like learn to read and do basic stuff. And you think
Mhm.
like, some of the way it's been handled. I'm glad you share both sides of it because like there's an upside of the pride of what you serve and there's a downside of like the shame, and I can understand that. But I've gone off topic now, bro, but I'm really glad what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is I'm glad we're
Yeah,
looking at it from the different points of view, because it's not just a tunnel vision thing. It's like a diamond. It's got many sides to how you look at it. So anyway, coming back to you personally, yeah, the PTSD side of things or anything with that. Again, focus from like how you overcame it and how you come through it. But first of all, we need to give people the context of what you did go through with that, if you're okay to
yeah, yeah.
mention it.
Yeah. So I never had flashbacks. Struggle struggle with fireworks. That's got a lot better. But bonfire night, especially when I came back because I came back from Afghanistan in 2010. I came back beginning end of October, beginning of November. So I was back home for bonfire night, and I remember basically hiding under the kitchen table at my friend's house because some fireworks, not all, but some fireworks sound quite similar to gunshots or to stuff that I heard when I was in Afghanistan. So yeah, fireworks have always been like my nemesis. I have to watch the fireworks. If I go to like an organized fire show or event, I have to watch them. And once I can see it take off and explode, I'm okay with that. But I'd say sleepless nights, a little bit here and there. It's mainly affected me over the years when it's like the anniversary of one of my brothers who died in Afghanistan. So yeah, like to name one, who's the main one, Joseph Poole, his name was. He was from the Royal Highland Fusiliers, I think, one Scots, and he unfortunately gave his life in Afghanistan, fighting alongside us. But yeah, and obviously my friend Bob Monkhouse as well, sergeant, same regiment as me. But I'd say when it comes to these times of year, when they died, that's a tough time. But like I said earlier, I went to therapy for the first time ever, and it was talking to a very professional and highly trained guy. I can't remember his name, but he basically he was using this. It's like hypnotherapy, and we using a flashing coloured light, and it was devised by some French person. He told me, but he was basically kind of semi-hypnotizing me and asking me to focus on, asking me to talk about certain stuff like I'm talking to you now, but focus on certain aspects that were causing me how I was beginning to feel, whether it were stuff that happened in Afghanistan or stuff that's happened after Afghanistan. And I feel like the therapy worked, not really with the light flashing, but I feel like it worked with being able to speak to a total stranger, basically. And I had 12 sessions of it. I think I went to 11 of them. I missed one of them. But yeah, 12 sessions on paper. And it helped just speaking about why us giving, like basically going to Afghanistan, in essence, taking the Taliban out and then 20 years later, putting the Taliban back in, why that made me so angry and why it was causing me to really lose control, basically. So yeah, I think it came at a time when the whole male mental health awareness has grown so much. Like you've got Andy's Man Club, and there's so many others. There's so many people who get together, and male bonding is becoming a thing again, and it's needed because it's been something that's been untalked about. Like male suicide is a big thing, and veteran male suicide is massive. I mean, the statistics in America are frightening, Liam, for veterans of Afghanistan and Iraq and Vietnam who are committing suicide in America. It's shocking.
Yeah. Oh, I know it is, mate. I know it is. It is shocking, and it's well, the whole male mental health thing, I mean, it's a massive topic all of its own, and it's something that today, I mean, we can't go into all of it as much as I'd love to, but suffice to say, speaking out, as a man and talking about your emotions, talking about your psychology and your beliefs on things, and not just you, but I mean, men in general listening to this,
Yeah.
it's a very, very important thing to do. I mean, I've done it myself, and it's something different reasons, but very similar process to what you were saying there. And the thing you've got to look at is obviously there's no shame in that. I mean, there's no. I mean, you can be a very tough, very strong male figure. You can be a good father. You can be a good provider. You can be a fighter, whatever, and you can still talk about your feelings and you can still be open, and it doesn't make you any less of a man. And I mean, I would go so far as to say you could cry. I mean, if you lose somebody close to you and you cry, but you deal with the emotion, it probably takes more strength than bottling it up and sort of hiding it from yourself as well as from everybody else. So, that side of things has definitely come a long way in recent times. Again, still a long way to go, but it's a very important topic. And I would say, go on, yeah, sorry, yeah,
Emotional awareness,
yeah,
being emotionally aware of your own feelings and emotions and trying to process them, and being aware of other people's emotions and trying to process them and help them at the same time.
yeah, empathy and everything like that. It all comes from this, and it's something that I'll touch on briefly, and then we'll go into the fighting side of things shortly with you as well. But one of the
Mhm.
things I do find fascinating is I look on your Facebook and everything, and you see some really cool stuff on there. Like I've seen things to do with like the samurai and like Eastern philosophies and things of that nature. I've seen some spiritual things on there about energy. Not being created or destroyed, but just changing form. One of the important laws of the universe, that is. I've
Yeah.
seen all of this, quite deep stuff. And I love it because I post a lot of stuff like that. I read a lot of stuff like that. If you could see this room, I got all different things around. But the point is, I'd like to touch on that side of you as well, because showing the human side of people, whoever I interview, that you're not just a soldier and you're not just a pit fighter either, but you're an all-rounded person, a father and a human being and a Yorkshireman and a compassionate, thoughtful person as well, because that obviously also shines through to me personally. Hence, we've been talking like an hour, and it's just flown by. And I'm gonna have to watch it because we need about half an hour on the fights, and that'll be about a good length for people to be able to sort of take in. But before we get into that, in terms of your philosophical side, I mean, I suppose a way to look at this is that something you've always had, or is that something that was activated within you in more recent times through going through some of these experiences, if that makes sense?
I'd say I'd I felt that way. I looked at life that way when I was younger. When I was younger, life was really fast, and I never really stopped to give it much thought. I never really paused and really just the scenery. And but I was always made aware of the beauty of the world and yeah, people around me. My mother always like give me like so a lot. I come from a family not really the most academically learned or but the worldly. So I was fortunate to be kind of mentored a little bit by a few worldly people who um, kind of gave me that thirst for knowledge and for adventure. So I'd say yeah, as I got older, I'd say probably the real spiritual and philosophical side really like manifested when I was when I left the military and I was going through the dark period, the dark time when I wanted to like realize and find out who I was. Um, so I was reading a lot more. I was yeah, quotations, different quotes, whether it were a Greek uh, historian or whether it were some African spirituality from thousands of years ago, Greek, Egyptian. Um, just try to take pieces from all over because you know what it'll be like yourself when you see a nice quote or a nice paragraph in something. It really hits home, and you feel like that. I feel like that was written for me. I feel like I can use that now, and that them words because words are so powerful. What's that? Not cliche or cheesy, but it's um, words are magic because the spelling. When you speak, you cast spells in essence. That's why they call it spelling. English wordplay is amazing. So many different words that mean so much, like understand, overstand, all that. But yeah, I'd say being close to death gives you an appreciation for life. So the more death I faced, it made me realize that I've got this blessed life, and I have to search for knowledge and find out what is my purpose if I can, or what are we here for. So yeah, definitely the journey for enlightenment, should I say, started when I was a seasoned veteran of combat and of the rough and tumbles of life.
Absolutely. Well, again, I'm really glad we've been able to mention that because, as I've already said, first of all, I think men embracing their sensitive side is very important, as well as the masculine side. And, I mean, life is all about balance, isn't it? I mean, it's great that you can, like you personally, you can fight and you can go to war and you can do pit fighting and all this, but then you can also be like a philosophical thinker and a family man and this type of thing. And I think life should have that balance. So, for men out there embracing their sensitivity as well as their strength, there's a lot to be gained. But yeah, I mean, going deeper to search for answers, it's funny, isn't it? When you start or when you answer one question, you realize there's a lot more questions. It usually rather than solving something, it usually opens up a lot more. So I've definitely been there. Now, obviously, the fighting side of things we need to talk about in this final phase, if you like I say, to give people a good length to be able to take it in, but not too long. But I'm happy though. Don't get me wrong, because we've gone into the deep stuff, and that's what I always aim for. Stuff that helps people. So I'm super happy. Don't get me wrong. But with the fighting side of things, I think the first thing to touch on here briefly is how you came across Spartan, or what first inspired you to want to give this a go. I mean, I know the boxing was there going way back when you were younger. I know the sports was always there, but yeah, what drew you to that type of combat specifically in the beginning?
I think, well, my friend Dan Dan, he's pretty well known on the bare knuckle boxing scene. He's fought some decent people over the years. He's been on BBC on a short part of a documentary. He also referees for Spartan. So yeah, he mentioned it to me, and I've obviously followed his journey. I ended up going to one of the shows, and I like the whole concept of the pit. Obviously, I spoke to Christian. Added Christian on Facebook at this point, and I like Christian's energy, mess about, no nonsense. And yeah, I thought, you know what? I fought in a ring, I fought in a cage. My first fight was bare knuckle was in a cage. It was for Spartan, but for the cage war side of it when they were just trialing something out. And that was a good experience. And I remember someone saying to me, they were like, "Oh, this person, he'd fought in the pit previously," and he goes, "You did well in your fight, right? But it doesn't really matter if it's not in the pit. It's all about the pit." So I kind of played on me, and I thought, "All right, cool. I think I can step into this pit and see what it's about." And then when I've got there, because everyone said to me, they're like, "Oh, the pit's really small. When you get in there, trust me, it's small and that." I'll be honest, I got in there straight away, and I felt like it opened up to me. I felt like I had enough space to put my feet and to think where I would go in if I needed to escape. There's three there's me and my opponent, and there's the referee, and there's still enough space for me to maneuver. I've done them fights, Liam. I've in the street or in a ring where I've come out angry and I've come out winging. And if you're angry in a fight situation, if you're angry in a battlefield situation, um, you're gonna lose. I think so. It's always better to be calm and keep your wits about you. So I would say that the pit is it's something that I'm relishing. I'm really enjoying it. I feel like I can move freely in there, and I can get the job done. So yeah, I'm enjoying it, as you can tell.
Amazing. And obviously, British champion, and you're doing some amazing things in there. Can you give people a summary of how many fights you've had, and just a little bit more about it? Because the reason I'm asking is, as a fighter, obviously, so, a lot of people will know you. You're already making a name for yourself on the bare knuckle scene, but I definitely think as a fighter, there's a lot more to come. There's a lot more people who will sort of join in with your journey, find out about your journey, and sort of follow you as you go up the levels. So, for anyone at this stage who's not aware, how many fights have you actually had in a pit so far, mate?
I've had three fights in the pit, yeah. So four bare knuckle, three in the pit.
Yeah.
Uh, Before that, I had four fights. I had one in the military, one proper boxing bout in the military, and then three white collar, charity, ultra white collar boxing type of thing. So yeah, I've had three pit fights. All this, I had one against John Best, Shane Ferguson, and the recent one against Bob Wilson. And then I've
Uh,
got a fight coming up on the 2nd of March against Will Cairns.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. Well, shout out to all your opponents. I know all those guys, all top fighters, and Dan Daniel you mentioned earlier as well. Shout out to everybody at Spartan. I mean, it's an amazing promotion. Christian as well. So yeah, obviously winning a British title. I mean, just to touch on that as well, it's a great achievement. It's an amazing achievement. I mean, when you won that, obviously we can talk about the fight itself, but I'm curious. what went through your mind basically? 'Cause it's another thing that people don't see. People see the fight, but what did it actually feel like to be to win that belt and everything in that moment when you realized you'd won, if that makes sense?
It felt good. Obviously, because I train hard regardless, train for life, not just for a pit fight or for a boxing bout. So respect to all my opponents. I'll be honest, that fight I fought at which is the belt that I've passed on now because I've gone up a weight. I'm quite fortunate that I can sit nicely at about 12 stone, maybe between 12 and 12 and a half comfortably up and down. So I moved down to the lightweight rankings, which is 11 stone to 12 stone. So I need to be anywhere within that bracket, basically. And I were hitting 11, 11, 12, 11, 13, under 12 nicely. And when I fought John and Shane, I were too big and too powerful at that weight for them lot. No disrespect to any lightweights, but it made more sense for me to be fighting up in middleweight, which was my plan initially anyway. So this fight that I took on the 2nd of December, that was against Bob Wilson, who he took it on a standing because my original opponent, he flopped. So Bob stood in and fought me. And I think Bob was a little bit heavier than me. I can't remember what, but it was a heavy guy. So yeah, shout out to Bob Wilson. So I think when whatever weight category he's fighting in, whether it's super middleweight or heavyweight, I think he's going to do quite well because he's got a bit of power in his right hand.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, big shout out to Bob. I interviewed him recently as well,
Yeah,
and
man.
yeah, amazing story, and obviously the military as well, and everything like that. So definitely very, very cool. I have to ask another thing here. When you're getting ready for a fight now, having been through everything you've been through with like putting your life on the line and everything else like that, do you get nervous or anything like that, or is it almost less than? And it's no disrespect to any fighters or anything, because it is hard getting in there mentally as well as physically. You have to have a will of steel to do it even. But obviously, I mean, you've literally risked death. So do you think that gives you like a mental edge over some of your opponents as well?
Yeah, definitely, because I'd say in life in general, like if I come across anything difficult, there's been times when I've been like, I've actually been to Afghan. Why am I stressing? Why am I worrying about this situation when technically I died in Afghanistan and I'm still here. So yeah, let's crack on and carry on. But I'd say that's within life, but within the remit of fighting, within the boxing ring, within the pit, same nerves always. I just manage them better now. So
Yeah,
yeah, every fight I had, and I think because I spent a lot of time fighting in the streets when I was drunk. So when I was in the military, I'd be out drinking. I wasn't a trouble causer, but if there was trouble, I was there. So and fighting on the street when you're drunk, fighting, yeah, you don't really feel it until the next day when you've got peas on your face or your knuckles are bust up. But fighting in a ring, when it's you. There's no one behind you. You might have a corner team, but it's you and your opponent. It's it's a nervous feeling, and for me, I wouldn't say it's nervous when I'm in the ring at all. It's beforehand. Maybe the day before, maybe for a little bit, I'll have like a rush of nervousness, like on fight day, and I'll be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. But I feel like that nervousness and that awareness and that little bit of fear, not what, yeah, a little bit of fear keeps me sharper because it makes me want to move quicker, wants me to keep my guard up, makes me want to move my feet, wants me to think steps ahead because however barbaric people think bare knuckle boxing is, or boxing or MMA, you've got to be smart to do these type of activities well. You've got to be very smart. You've got to be smart when someone's trying to punch your face in. So it's like it's a violent form of chess. Do you know what I mean? You've got to think steps ahead, but rather than someone checkmating you, they could be coming over with an overhand right or an uppercut, do you know what I mean? And putting your lights out. So as a human being, regardless of what I've been through in the past, Liam, I can proudly say, yeah, I'll always get nervous in a situation of confrontation. but it's how I manage it and it's how I react off that. That's what's key to it all.
Absolutely. I mean, it goes back to what you said earlier, doesn't it, about the, feeling the fear, but going ahead anyway. That's the courage, And I know there's people out there who claim that they're not, that, they don't feel that. But when you're around it with the fighting and in any form, whether, boxing, MMA, kickboxing, bare knuckle, it doesn't matter. I've been around it all. You're in the dressing room, even this, the very seasoned champions, world champions and things, they still feel the nerves. It's just they're better at handling, and channeling that energy into something good. And, certain things like that as well. And another couple of things about this, and we'll wrap this up fairly soon. But I also wanted to ask you: people always want to know when you get hit with a bare fist versus a glove, like a boxing glove, does it hurt more, or like, I mean, what's your take on that? Because some people say it does, some people say it doesn't, some people say they feel it the next day, or and all this type of thing. But what's your view on pushing through the pain barrier and that side of things as well?
I'd say with bare knuckle, I feel it the next day. I mean, I think my last these 4 fights that I've had bare knuckle, so the cage and the free pit fights. I think I've been punched twice, maybe. So, um, Bob and my first opponent was quite a bit heavier than me as well, and taller. And he caught me with a good shot, good straight jab. We both jabbed each other at the same time. Got a picture of it somewhere. And it's like I think my jab came off best, like fencing. Um, but yeah, I'd say getting hit by bare knuckle, you feel it the next day if it's a good shot. With gloves, me personally, I feel it there and then. I think it's the whole sensation of the glove, and it's like because it's not just the fist behind the glove and not the wrapping and the glove. It's that it's all connected together. So it's like a triple impact. You're getting hit by 3 things in essence, if you know what I mean. And it's more of a stinging, stun sensation, I think. So yeah, I'd say I'm more likely to feel the glove there and then. And don't get me wrong, if it was a good shot with a glove, you most likely feel it the next day as well. But with the bare knuckle, and like when I've had fights in the street, I usually, but saying that, when I've had fights when I've been growing up younger, it's usually been alcohol induced. So yeah, I'd say I prefer to get punched with a bare knuckle with a fist, because I also know most of my opponents, or most of any opponents, if they're smart, they're not going to throw stupid punches, because bare knuckle, it's known that the old school bare knuckle fighters, they used to go for a lot of body shots. That's why a lot of the poses, the hands are down here, because a lot of the fit, it's hard to hit this little thing with all this hard thing behind here. So it's so tough. You can be aiming for here and miss and hit here or hit here. And knuckle versus skull's going to win every time. So I do believe that bare knuckle, outside sound weird to some people, but it does feel safer because you got to pick your shots a lot more. So
Yeah, well, there is that side of it as well, and I know obviously there's some big hitters in the game, but it's still with boxing. When you see with like some of the high level boxers or anyone with power, they can throw a lot more into it because they got the pad in as well and not really hold back. And I'm not saying that the bare knuckle people hold back, but you have to have that precision as well, and even with the right part of the hand and not any part of the hand, because it's so easy to break. Yeah, so easy to break your hand. So, so where do you want to go with it in the future? Obviously, you've got this big one coming up next year, but I mean, assuming you win that, which I believe you will do, and that makes you two-time British champion, I believe. Then, where do you want to go from there? After that point with the whole game, do you have a specific goal, or are you just taking it like a fight at a time type of thing?
well, I think Christian's got. I think he's got a few plans. Christian's is obviously is a little. He's always got something. Like a fight's going to set up another fight, or so. I think there'll be something in the pipeline that line. But I like obviously I'm Spartan, but I'd like to because I've seen people talk bad about people who fight in Spartan, who fight in the pit. People who fight in the pit can't fight, can't box. It's just scrappers. I never call myself a boxer. I'm not a boxer. I'm a fighting man. So I'd like to go for BKFC or go for BKB. In a ring, because I know I can. I can do good. I've got good footwork and awareness in the pit. Feel like I can replicate that in a ring. because I've got plenty of space to move if I need to move, if I want to move. I believe it's up to me if I get into them arenas. I know BKFC does tryouts, and I did apply for the tryouts, and I were accepted, but it was to go all the way down to London, and it corresponded on the same day as my recent fight against Bob Wilson. So hopefully, I'd like to obviously still fight with Spartan, but obviously, if I can go and fight at different while I'm still contracted, if I can go fight on different shows and fly the flag for Spartan as well, that we're not all just scrappers, that we can actually fight, then that we can actually box if need to be and make it look, that aesthetically pleasing type of fighting, hit and not get hit. Because I've seen so many people in the pit just go in there and start swinging, and it's impressive that people can just throw down. But I think being able to, and there's a few who can do it, who can bob and weave and evade. So yeah, I feel like I'm gonna bring a little bit of, because with the whole pit fighting, I feel like it's a bit more exotic, a bit more spicy. When people find out you do bare knuckle, they're like, "You do bare knuckle?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." And they're like, "Oh, is it a pit? Is it a cage? Is it what?" I say it's a pit. They're like, "Ooh." So their whole, like when I said earlier about when people used to react like when I used to say I was in the army, and they're like, "Ooh." It's similar to that when I say, "Oh yeah, I do bare knuckle pit fighting in an 8x8 hay bale." They're like, "Ooh," and I laugh. I like their reaction. It's nice. So yeah, man.
Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Well, we've talked about a lot of things. I mean, a good hour and a half, and we've luckily been able to get some fun stories and also the deeper side of things. And those are two things I was aiming for. It's like some stories from obviously your fights from the military. Some of the obviously the entertainment, like what people want to hear, but then also the deeper side of things and some of the lessons you've learned and everything. And I'm always mindful when I speak to people who've done as much in life as you have, that we sort of scratch the surface in a way, because I know there's so many more things you can share, there's so many more stories, there's so many more insights. But at the same time, we've got some really good topics today that people can learn from, people can benefit from. It get people thinking, get people looking at things from a different point of view, I hope, through your story. And for me, I'm very happy with that, because that's tick the boxes of what I was aiming for, and then obviously quite a bit more as well. But I've said this to a couple of people, although I don't say this to many people. I definitely think further down the road, as you have more fights and you do more with this, we can do like an updated version, when you've won some more things, and talk about all this some more. But I'm very, very happy with what we've talked about today. And as well as thanking you for your time, mate, I also want to thank you for being such an open book with me and with our audience, and sharing so many things that really, they are quite personal. And it does take bravery. It does take that courage you were talking about in a different type of way to put some of this stuff out there. So I just want to thank you for all of that, to be honest, my mate, and say it's really, really been a pleasure, and I've really enjoyed it, and I hope that you've enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, no, I haven't. I was going to say on courage. Courage comes in many forms. Don't always have to be on a battlefield. Life can be a battlefield. So yeah, I just want to say, whoever watches this, just keep soldiering on, keep fighting the good fight, because there's always better days. And to you, Liam, I'd say thank you for reaching out and giving me this opportunity to tell part of my story. And if it can inspire anyone, if it can give anyone some insight, or if anyone else hears this and they're thinking about reaching out, they've got want information on joining the military or pit fighting, bare knuckle boxing, then give me a shout.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm going to say the same. Reach out to this man, to our viewers, because in terms of fighting, the best is yet to come. Definitely, and I definitely think in life in general, actually, because how much you've grown as a person, how much you'll continue to grow from here. And I will say to our audience as well, when you join Ryan's social media, which I advise you to do, it's not just all about fighting. Like I said, there's some really good things that he shares about life and about wisdom and knowledge, and becoming the best version of ourselves, these types of topics. So I definitely think it'd be worth your time of our viewers, not just for the fights. There's been some very exciting fights coming up. You can get tickets by contacting Ryan as well, all of that, the usual stuff. But it does go a little bit deeper as well. So everybody join the journey.
I know we've been at it for a while, and it's been good. I spent I spent 2 months, just over 2 months, in the Democratic Republic of Congo last year, uh, through work doing security work, close protection through being in the military. And from my last fight, against, I think it was Shane. I raised money for a charity that I was working for, who basically provided children who were basically orphans of war. Some of them were child soldiers. Some of them, they're basically a product of the mineral industry, so all the digging for cobalt and all that type of thing. These are the victims of us being able to live with iPhones and Tesla cars and all that stuff. What needs lithium batteries. But so yeah, I've raised money for a charity called I Heart Africa, and my other fights, I always also raise money for the Royal British Legion, because the Royal British Legion helped me when I was going through the dark times that I mentioned earlier. And my other fights, I will continue to raise as much money as I can for them two chosen charities. So yeah, Royal British Legion and I Heart Africa. That's part of the reason why I'm doing it as well. And I almost forgot. So yeah, I want to big up the people of Congo, and I want to big up I Heart Africa and the Royal British Legion and Spartan, and yeah, Aru.
Oh, mate, I'm glad we got to mention that because that's a really, really good cause, and I'm really glad we got that in there. And can people can like donate and all this type of thing, or
I
um,
I Heart Africa is a charity. It's a registered charity within the UK, within America, and within the Democratic Republic of Congo. So it's I Heart Africa. You can go there. They're doing a GoFundMe, which they've done quite well with. They've built a village for the people. Hopefully, the people can become self-sustainable by producing their own products like soaps and things like that. So yeah, give it a follow, guys, and if you can donate, if not, just spread, share, word of mouth. That's what's needed.
oh, mate, that's an amazing cause, and I'm glad. See, there's a lot of sort of hidden depths, and there's a lot of things with you that a lot more going on behind the scenes. I mean that as a compliment, and it's definitely a good thing. Is there anyone else we need to mention? Then any sponsors, any other people who've helped you with your journey behind the scenes? Just to make sure we haven't missed anyone, or have we covered them
Uh,
all?
just my mum, obviously, my brothers, my sisters, my girlfriend, my daughter, my son, all my military veterans who are struggling, all my military veterans who are living life to the fullest, and just every human being who is a human being and doesn't follow the constraints of man and lives within love. That's it. It's love. We follow love. It's so easy to love, so easy to love, and there's too much oppression and hatred. So yeah, man, big up everyone, big up yourself, Liam.
Oh, that's a beautiful message to close out with, my friend, and a big thing about what I'm all about, breaking down those boundaries, breaking down perceived differences through, between people which are not really there. All of these things you shared, powerful. Um, what an amazing talk, mate. Honestly, exceeded my expectations. I knew it would be good, but it really has exceeded my expectations. I'm just going to do a quick photo of us talking just so I can post it. And there we go, that one. Just so I can post that and say the interview's coming soon. Bear with me a second. What's that doing? I'm still there. Here we go. Yeah. So and I'll send this to you when it's released. Between the two of us, we can share it out there and get it to reach as many people as possible. And we'll just go from there, my friend. I'll have it out this week now before Christmas, because I think you're one of my last ones, or possibly my last one before Christmas. So I'll definitely get it out over the next couple of days, and we'll just get your story out there. People can learn about you, and people can learn about life, and take some wisdom and some knowledge, and some happiness and some peace as well away from this. So thank you so much again, my brother, for your time, and I'll speak with you very soon when it's released, and we'll go from there. Okay.
Thank you, Liam, man. Pleasure. You have a good Christmas, and enjoy the sunshine.
Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel, and there'll be more videos coming soon.